Now, we want to turn our attention to one of the stories of the football season so far, on and off the field, obviously. It's Newcastle, and I'm delighted to say Craig Hope is back with us. Craig, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Morning, guys. Very good, very good.
We were doing a bit about Chelsea earlier on, and the situation they find themselves in, and the little blip that Potter's going through at the moment, and then was looking forward to the next fixture, and of course, well, lo and behold, it's St James's Park, which in previous seasons maybe Chelsea would have chalked down as an automatic 3 points, but not anymore. Suddenly the trip to St James's Park is pretty grim for everybody else.
Yeah, well, for a lot of years, Newcastle were the Samaritans of Premier League football, in need of a win, in need of a pick-me-up, dial 0191 for Tyneside, and the teams would invariably come here, and Newcastle had this incredible run of breaking teams, losing sequences in the wrong way, of course. Not anymore, 2022, Newcastle have only lost once at St James's Park, and that was to Liverpool. They've only lost once this season in all competitions, and that again was to Liverpool, and only in the 98th minute. So it is an entirely different prospect up here now, and Chelsea really couldn't probably wish to be coming to a worse place, especially given it's the last game before they send off Newcastle into the World Cup break. It's a tea time kickoff that gives the Geordies an extra 2.5 hours to get some ale inside them inside the town. St James's will be absolutely bouncing. There always is that extra little bit of zip and bit of zest under the lights as well. And for once, as a journalist covering the North East patch up here, you're going into home games fully expecting Newcastle United to win, and I'll be very surprised if they didn't beat Chelsea again on Saturday night. What is
it that makes Eddie Howe a good manager? What are the characteristics that you've seen so far, apart from being good in the transfer market, and that's obviously a committee decision, or not just him. Obviously, he's got a voice in it, but like the bits that have made Almiron good at the level that he's playing at. Like what is Howe good at?
If I was going to list his qualities, I would say he is honest, he's intelligent, and he's extremely hardworking. Now, if you put those three things together, I think the modern player and supporter also will buy into you. And Eddie has got an awful lot of goodwill up here, be that from within the dressing room or be that on the terraces. From the minute he walked in, he was believable. And I sit here as a journalist. How many times have I been on your show? Whenever I come on here, it's invariably to talk about a manager who I've fallen out with, or a manager that I don't necessarily rate. I can honestly say this guy is the real deal. He absolutely is top draw. When he came into the club, there was people probably from beyond Tyneside, even on Tyneside, who were saying, this is the equivalent of Manchester City's Mark Hughes, the guy who will take them so far before they go out and get a Pochettino, a Mourinho, a Guardiola, whatever you want to call it. They don't have to. Newcastle have hit the new owners have hit upon with their very first managerial appointment. They've hit upon a guy who can take them all the way. He is absolutely obsessed with improvement and with betterment. And the biggest compliment I can pay him is the fact that this team, which is playing regularly, week in, week out, 6 of the 10 starters were already at the club pre-takeover. 6 of the 10 starters were players who, supporters of Steve Bruce, and put down as championship players, put down as not being good enough, put down as being the reason Newcastle United are in a relegation zone. They weren't the problem. Everything else around them was the problem. Eddie Howe has come in and he's taken a lot of those same players. Miguel Almiron, the most informed player in the Premier League. Joe Linton transformed. Fabian Schär looking like a world-class centre-half all of a sudden. Couldn't get a game previously. He's taken those players and he's improved them day on day. He's given them confidence, belief, tactical improvement, technical improvement. He improves players as both footballers and as people, and that is, as I said before, the biggest compliment I can pay him, and it's the reason Newcastle are where they are.
Will Eddie Howe, Craig, be someone who puts more emphasis on a top 4 finish or winning cups? Because scraped past Palace last night on penalties in the League Cup, and I think there was a bit of a moment of brevity in one of the press conferences during the week where journalist pointed out that the Fairs Cup before the Apollo 11 moon landing in 1969 was their last trophy as a club. So, I mean, Newcastle fans will want trophies and want them fairly soon.
How ironic, though, previously Newcastle used to rotate in the Cup to safeguard against the Premier League status. We were there last night before the game saying, you can understand if they rotate to protect their Champions League ambitions. What a turnaround in a year, the fact that we're having those conversations. But, Eddie wants to win a cup, and especially, there was a moment last night as the teams were preparing to take penalties and the scores flashed up on the big board, and I asked this of Eddie afterwards, it revealed that Tottenham Arsenal and Chelsea had all gone out of the competition. Suddenly, the outcome of that penalty shootout, the significance of it was amplified somewhat. Newcastle have got a really good chance now. There's only Manchester City and Liverpool left in as teams you would probably want to avoid in the round of 16s and the 16, the quarterfinals. And there's such a good feel-good factor up here at the moment. There's so much momentum that I think Eddie realises in a season without European football, why not try and use that to propel you into the latter stages of the cup competitions? And he really did laugh this week when he was reminded that 35 days after Newcastle United last won a trophy, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. So, Newcastle are reaching for the stars this season, be that a Champions League finish or progress in the League Cup or the FA Cup. And I've got no reason to doubt them or dissuade them from doing that.
So is the break coming at a good time or a bad time? Because it's going to interrupt this momentum.
If we're being honest, bad time. It's got to be. What team who has won 7 of the last 8 matches and is in the vein of form Newcastle are in, what team can say it's a good thing to have a break? On the flip side of that, Newcastle haven't got too many players going to the World Cup, so it's a 5-6 week period for Eddie Howe to work with his team, on tactics, shape, confidence, technical aspects, everything I spoke about earlier. And if you wanted any manager in the country exposed to his players for a prolonged period of time right now, it would probably be Eddie Howe. So good is he and such an influence and such a difference does he make on the training pitch. They're going to go to Saudi during the international break for a week or so. And if you remember, the last time they went to Saudi was back in January. They returned from that to win 5 of 6 games and propel them to the middle of the table. So there's always a positive to be had when Eddie Howe is manager, and I think Newcastle have got to really try and seize that.
You tweeted last night, I think, about the extra investment that the owners have made into the club. It's an extra 70 million. I'm not really sure how that works. Is it do they buy shares in it, or do they buy from somebody else, or do they issue share capital extra? Is this kind of a way of skirting the financial fair play rules, or is it just kind of how football works?
It's just a capital investment, and that money will only be taken into account with regards that money will not be taken into account with regards to financial fair play if it is spent on things like infrastructural costs. Now, at the moment, Newcastle spend a lot of money on upgrading the training ground that wasn't really fit for purpose. So the bulk of that, I imagine, will go with the day-to-day running costs of the club. But of course, they've also got one eye on January, and it's going to be really interesting going into January, because all the noises coming out of the club at the moment are that they probably won't spend big. They're happy with what they've got. They are restricted by FFP, but they go into January in 3rd or 4th position, as is looking likely. They might just have a decision to make, and if someone like a James Maddison might be available, in actual fact, I don't think he probably will be. I don't think Leicester can afford to sell him for where they are in the league right now. But if that calibre of player did become available at the right price, they can act, and I think they might just, if they look at it and think, this could be the little bit of stardust we need to keep us in those Champions League places.
If there's a man who epitomises the turnaround of Newcastle, Craig, it's probably Miguel Almiron. And I know you wrote a piece on him earlier in the week. He went from a laughingstock, as you said, to a goal machine, and it kind of became a figure of comic relief for Jack Grealish and others with his performances. And yet now you look at this guy, and what was he, £21 million from the MLS a few years ago? All of a sudden he epitomises all that Eddie Howe is about. It
is, yeah. I mean, I will clarify, I didn't use the word laughingstock and copy. Laughingstock was on the headline, so I do have to in part take ownership of it, but I wouldn't have called him a laughingstock. He was more... Now, so when Jack Grealish made the comment, playing like Almiron to poke fun at his teammate Riyad Mahrez at the end of last season, listen, it was crass and it was needless, but you did kind of know what he meant. Miguel Almiron had almost become a byword for aimless endeavour, someone who ran around but didn't really have that end product. And I think all Newcastle supporters and observers, journalists up here like myself, would agree with that. Yet what we've seen this season is the untapping of the potential that was probably always there. Miguel Almiron is a player who needs direction, he needs instruction, he needs a good coach. Now, for a period, he had that with Rafa Benitez, and he did play well. But under Steve Bruce, that just went totally awry. Miguel Almiron was lost at times. He was playing central midfield, and he looked like a player who was headed out of the club. Eddie Howe, as you touched on there, is there are 2 huge success stories in terms of players who were probably headed out of Newcastle: Joe Linton and Miguel Almiron. And right now, 7 goals in 7 games, while Jack Grealish sits on the bench for Manchester City. So it's certainly Miguel who was having the last laugh at the moment.
investment, the trip to Saudi, the Saudi under-19, under-20 team coming to play, the links to Saudi Arabia are obviously strengthening as opposed to like anything else that maybe people might have thought, but it doesn't make sense for the links to do anything other than strengthen. That's kind of the whole point of the Saudi Investment Fund getting involved here. While the team is riding high like this, I suppose it's difficult for any of the Newcastle fans to really complain too much, or is there? What's that relationship like at the moment between the fans and the owners and the project and the point of the project?
Well, it's strong. It's incredibly strong. There's nothing but praise for the owners, and I guess you're hinting towards other concerns over the identity of the ownership and human rights and everything. I've spoken about this on this show with you now. And I have to be perfectly honest, I think I gave the same answer the last time. I don't speak on behalf of Newcastle supporters. I'm a journalist up here, but I think I've got a good handle on what they think and what they feel. And they have been able to, the same way as Eddie Howe has been able to, the same way as the players have been able to, they've been able to separate football from politics. And they're looking at this in the isolation of a football story. And when you look at that, we've just spent 5 minutes talking about how good the atmosphere is, how good a manager Eddie Howe is, the transformation in players and all of those sort of positives. Now, that is what supporters are focusing on, and that is what they're enjoying, that is what they're championing. They're enjoying going to the football match, and St James's really is a special place to watch football and to cover football and to play football right now. And there really is that feel-good factor back in the city. And the other issues are there. They do exist. That is a conversation we need to have. It is something we've pressed Eddie Howe on several times. And, even myself as a journalist in the city, that every time I write a match report, every time I go to a press conference, I can't address the other issues. Does that mean we're denying them? No, they exist. And when the time is right, we do vigorously pursue them. I want to go to Saudi next month with Newcastle. That isn't necessarily an easy thing to do, but I want to go then. I want to ask these questions. I want to have an audience with the guys from PIF. So don't think these questions aren't being asked and these issues aren't being covered. But as I said, we've just spent 5 minutes talking about the football, so there is another story to tell, and we've got to do that as journalists up here, especially as it is emerging as a quite incredible football story as well.
It's a young population in Saudi Arabia as well, Craig, and I think that's something that Newcastle maybe are looking to tap into with talk of all these commercial deals as well.
There is, yeah, and we sat down with Darren Eales last month for the first time, the chief executive, in a box at St James's Park, and we had a chat with him, and he didn't deny the Saudi presence. He didn't try to dodge it. If anything, he embraced it. He said, yes, the Saudis are the majority owners of the football club. We will look to exploit is probably the wrong word, but we will look to take advantage of that relationship in PIF's connections throughout the world and in Saudi to bring in commercial partners, increase revenue, find a way around FFP, not by cheating it, by legitimately bringing in extra commercial revenue, extra monies into the club so they can invest more in the playing squad and take the club and the team to where they want to be. That's fairly obvious, and they didn't try and shy away from that, and I fully expect within the next few months for commercial deals, be it a stadium sponsorship or a shirt sponsorship, to be announced with Saudi partners, and for those deals probably to be fairly lucrative too. The
transfer window, this window, will be very illustrative. Like if those deals are coming down the tracks, you can probably find a way to make them work, make big transfers work if you wanted to, with financial fair play, given that it's a new financial year, obviously, as soon as December 31st midnight kicks in. So if I was in charge of a club, I would be saying, we're not spending any money, and then I would do my deal in the style of Liverpool, who would never spend any money, never, ever, ever, and then they buy players for 70 million. You're like, well, I thought you weren't going to sign anybody, as opposed to Man United, who get pressured into massively overpaying for all of their players. So it does seem like the intelligence of how to do those deals slightly off Broadway is baked into the club at the moment.
Yeah, which club would brief that they were going to spend a load of money going into a transfer window? The last Newcastle have had 2 windows now with new owners, and every time it's been, a limited budget, conservative spend, and they've emerged. They've spent £200 million now. What I will say is, as much as it's a lot of money, £200 million generally doesn't buy you a team that goes from the bottom of the table into the top 4. They've got to be given credit for spending the money they have spent very well, in B, as I touched on earlier, improving the players who were already at the squad. It's a combination of the two is to the reason why Newcastle have enjoyed this incredible turnaround. But what will they do in January? Well, you touched on the FFP there, new financial year. It doesn't quite work like that. It's calculated over a 3-year period, and Newcastle are at almost the very limit of their FFP expenditure at the moment. Could they go again in January and speculate to accumulate, front load that spending with a view to bringing in bigger, more lucrative sponsors down the line? Well, yes, they could, and if the right deal is there, they perhaps will act. But the message at the moment, as it was the previous 2 windows, and we know what happened, the message at the moment is they're probably not going to spend big in January.
I have one last wildcard theory for you here, right? Let's say the World Cup goes really badly or really well from an England perspective, and Gareth Southgate decides, OK, I've had enough. So if he wins it, I'm riding off into the sunset. If he goes out in the first round, it's like, well, OK, my time here has come to an end. The obvious candidate at that stage for the England job would be Eddie Howe. Is there a world in which that happens?
Yeah, it would be, absolutely, but it won't happen. I can 99.9% sit here now and say, even if the FA came and asked Eddie Howe to be England manager, which I think they probably should if Gareth does go, he would say no. The England job will always be the England job. The England job will be the England job in 5 years' time, 10 years' time. Eddie Howe's still a relatively young man. He's only 44. The Newcastle job, at this moment in time, is unique. It's once in a lifetime. It's the most exciting project in world football. You don't leave the Newcastle job as it is now to go and take over England. That might sound like a crazy thing to hear. I don't know. But it's the truth. And that is how Eddie's thinking at the moment. There's no way he would leave Newcastle for any job in the world right now. I can confidently say that I really can, knowing him and speaking to him about this in recent months. So yeah, while it is a very plausible, likely scenario, it won't happen. So there you go. That's my answer.
Craig, we wait to see the final England squad later today, I think. But interested to see in the mail, you had yourself and a few of the other columnists picking your selected starting 11 ahead of the World Cup. So you've gone with 4-2-3-1 Pickford, and then the back four of Trippier, Cody, Stones, Shaw, Rice and Bellingham in front. Then you've Foden, Maddison, Grealish and Kane. So I suppose what jumps out there is, I mean, some people go for Dyer, some people go for Maguire, some people go for Gomez alongside Stones. You've gone for Connor Cody, and you also have James Maddison in the team as well. Yeah,
so I think there's 3 players in there who won't be in Gareth's team. I think Gareth's starting 11 is probably quite predictable now. The 3 who, from my 11, who won't be in Gareth's 11 will be Connor Cody at the back. That'll probably likely be Harry Maguire or Eric Dyer. Jack Grealish won't probably start wide left. That'll be Raheem Sterling, and James Maddison won't start in that role behind the forward. I think it'll probably be Mason Mount or Bukayo Saka who comes into that position, or mix and match across the front 3. I went for Grealish because I just think he's a different player in an England shirt, and I think Gareth should take the handbrake off and really try to attack this World Cup and play on England's strengths. Now, once over, he looked at the England team and thought you could understand why he was building from the back and made their strength that solid defensive unit. I don't think it is anymore. I think you might as well go there and attack and make the most of the likes of Phil Foden, Harry Kane. You're better in your best players. Jude Bellingham pushing on, supporting that. I went for Grealish. I think he's a different player in an England shirt. I went for James Maddison, who it looks like might not even go to the World Cup, never mind start. I went for him because I just think he is one of the most informed players in the Premier League right now. And I went for Cody at the back, to be honest with you, because I couldn't think of anything else. It wasn't that I particularly think Connor Cody's having an excellent season, but when you're asked to do these little things for the paper, and I had to pick my England 11, you suddenly realise how short and how stretched they are at the back, and how you're probably going to have to put in at least 3 of the 4, Kieran Trippier apart, who isn't enjoying a good time at club level at the moment in the back 4. That is why, to take the question on and the subject on, I don't think England will go far in this World Cup. I think they'll probably negotiate the group with a little bit of difficulty, a little bit of discomfort, and then the first good team they come up against, be that the last 16 or the quarter-final, I think they'll probably go out.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting to see who makes the grade today in the squad. Craig, always great to talk to you. Happy birthday, sir. Thanks a million for joining us.
You too, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
It's Craig Hope of the Daily Mail there, giving us some thoughts on the situation at Newcastle at the moment.